God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's fire when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
Whoa! Are you all ready for Christmas? I hope you like my my Christmas studio. I know I'm already feeling kind of in the mood right now. I want to give you a little bit of a background on this thing called Advent Conspiracy. Now, some of you have, in fact, the majority of people from North Point know exactly what this means because we've been doing this now for almost 10 years. And this is really for more for new folks and as a reminder for all of us about what Advent Conspiracy means. About 10 years ago, I was kind of looking around and trying to come up with some kind of an idea that would help all of us do Christmas better. It felt like we had just been overtaken by culture, overtaken by shopping, overtaken by bills, overtaken by the emotion of Christmas. We understand here kind of intimately that the holiday season is not always a really good one. In fact, it brings out some of the deepest and most profound emotions that are connected to our family or connected to loss. And we don't ever want our approach here at North Point around the holidays to be insensitive or to do anything at all that would make difficult feelings even worse. Rather, we started looking for a way to celebrate Christmas that was consistent with the character and the person of Jesus Christ whom we celebrate during the Christmas season. And during my, I don't know, just kind of study and looking around, I came across in the very earliest stages of this thing called Advent Conspiracy. And what it was at that time was 3 youth pastors who were friends from seminary, and they had reconnected with each other, over the phone or over email and so forth, and they were all experiencing the same things in their churches, and that was that Christmas just didn't feel like what the Bible was talking about. It didn't feel at all like the birth of Jesus. It felt more like commercialism. It felt more like culture had just taken and strangled the life out of the real meaning of Christmas. And no matter how hard church people tried to paint things on the wall or buy certain things or say, Jesus is the reason for the season or whatever happened, it just seemed to fall short because the meaning of Christmas is taken from the meaning of who Jesus is and why he came to live among us. And so out of that idea came another idea, which was to, how about if we acknowledge that all of us already have enough stuff? And so why don't we just give away more? Just give away more. That is the spirit of Christmas. That is why Jesus came, was to give his life away. And so what better way to celebrate Christmas than to give, especially to those in need? So years ago we started this, and it started with a simple challenge, and that challenge remains the same today as it did 10 years ago. And that is, we challenge each other as part of this church family to spend less on ourselves at Christmas, spend less on our immediate family and those that take up most of the room in our heart, and recognize that we already have enough, and let's give that away. And so my challenge to you is to consider taking half of what you would ordinarily spend at Christmas, Just kind of figure that up. The amount of money that you would spend on presents for your family, and wrapping paper, and travel, and food, and all of the festivities, the decorations. Just kind of give yourself a rough figure of what that would be. Cut that number in half and take half of that number and put it in the offering at North Point. Designate it Advent Conspiracy, and we will take that money and we will give it away to people in need. The first year we did this, didn't know what would happen. We weren't sure if it was going to cut into our offering. We didn't know if we were going to come up short with what we needed as a church to continue to operate, but we just kind of stepped out in faith to see how that would be done, and we came up with $8,000 or $10,000 that year to give away to others. We were blown away, and on top of everything else, our offerings continued to stay just exactly where they were, and maybe even more. And so we thought, well, let's do this again. And the next year comes along, and we end up collecting additional money over and above $10,000. And each year it just seems to grow and flourish, and we add on to the list of people that we can help, and organizations and ministries here close to home as well as around the world. And so this year we with COVID and jobs and all of the stuff going on, we kind of swallowed deep, but I'm so proud of our Advent Conspiracy team, because they set our goal again this year to collect during the Christmas season, to collect $25,000. That's our goal. And we don't do it by fundraising, and we don't do it by special this or that. We just challenge each other to not spend so much on ourselves at Christmas, and to give away to people that have genuine need. That's what Advent Conspiracy is. So over the next few months, as we lead up to Christmas, we're the crazy church that starts doing Christmas in September. And we, for real, start doing Christmas. And you're going to hear about it. You're going to see videos. You're going to see stories of people that we have helped in the past, and stories of new people in new areas of service that we want to contribute to. One of the things that we do every year is we contribute 25% of what comes in to fresh water projects around the world. And we are so excited to introduce you to a new one that we are going to be working with this year. I know I'm super excited because he happens to be a personal friend of mine. I think you're going to be blown away when you hear about what he and his organization are doing. There are so many cool things that we do during the Christmas season. We don't want any of you to miss any of it at all, because I promise you, if you invest yourself in Advent Conspiracy, your Christmas for your family will never, ever be the same. Because without a doubt, you won't have to put up a sign on your lawn to remind you that Jesus is the reason for the season. Your family is going to get to live it out each day as you live like Jesus would live if he were here. So we want you to have a Merry Christmas. Don't get tired of it. We're just getting started. Looking forward to it. Right now, let's get ready to enter into our prayer time this morning. It'll be a good one today, I promise. So as we get started this morning, I want to remind you again, like we always do each week, to go and get some juice of some kind and some bread that you have on hand. Bring it for you and the rest of your family or your friends who have gathered together to watch this, be part of it, because we'll share communion with each other in just a moment or two. I want to pick up where we left off last week. We started a new study on freedom, and we'll be here for a while. There are so many different angles and different levels of study that we can do on this topic. I'm pretty excited to get rolling on this over the next few weeks. I want to read two verses that we looked at last week just as a reminder of where we were, and then we'll pick up in the same story where we left off at the end of last week. Here was where we were. John 8, 31 and 32 says, "If you continue in my word, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." These are such amazing words. And what Jesus is saying is, look, stay close to me. Walk with me. Listen to my words. Obey the things that I say. And if you do that, you will truly become one of my disciples. That's his plan. That's his way of doing things. He is not looking for part-time spectators, but looking for people that will take him at his word, do what he says, and follow closely and continue on in that. And if you do that, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Or another way of saying it is, then you will know Jesus, and he will set you free. And right from the get-go, they missed the point. I want you to look at the very next verse in this story. It says, "Those that were listening to him answered, 'We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we will be set free?'" Look, they were Jews. They were truly Abraham's descendants, Abraham's family tree. They were, as Jews, members of the royal household of God. And they say back to Jesus, "We have never been the slaves to anyone." And I read that and I go, what? What are you talking about? Even right now, as they say that, they are under the bondage of Rome. Hundreds of years of slavery to the Egyptians is in their past. It frames the way that they see life is through the eyes of bondage. So what are they saying? I mean, they're not stupid. I think that what they're saying is, nobody tells us how to worship. We don't need to be freed from any bondage of that kind. It's as if they were saying, even though we've been in bondage to other nations, we have never, ever, ever allowed anyone to control how we worship God. That is uniquely ours. We know how to do that. And we have always been free. Even if we were in shackles, we were always free to worship God as we like, as we know we should. And we will fight to the death for that. We have never let anyone take that away from us. And I think that's what they were saying. And even more than that, I think they were saying the reason that we can believe that, the reason that we can live that out with such passion, is because we know we are God's special people. We know that we are God's chosen race. We've got this. Don't go telling us you've come to set us free, Jesus. We didn't need to be freed to do this. But here's the real problem. And this is what I think most often keeps people, even today, from truly becoming Jesus' disciples and finding the path to freedom. And that's that we somehow deep down really think that we are okay the way that we are. We may think we need a few minor adjustments here and there, but really there are no big changes required. We feel like we're already free. And that is really true for us who are people who live in a land of freedom. We think we're okay. It's like we look at ourselves the way that that travel brochures look at San Diego. Look, I told you that I'm from San Diego, and San Diego is this amazing, beautiful place. It's part of my past, part of my history, shaped me in many ways to be the person that I am, living there, growing up there. But it's really funny because if all you ever do is look at a travel brochure for San Diego, you would think that everybody who lives there lives on the beach, underneath palm trees, sipping, iced tea on the beach and eating a fish taco, and everything is great in our board shorts and sandals and whatever. People that I talk to here in Texas who have never ever traveled to San Diego, I think labor under this idea that it's kind of like what the travel brochures say. Well, the truth of the matter is that those travel brochures don't show poverty. They don't show homelessness. They don't show gangs. They don't show the really destitute parts of San Diego County and beyond that live in a completely and totally different way than the affluent who live right on the coast. It's kind of that way with us, is that it's like if we get people to just look at the surface, or if we only look at the surface of our lives, we actually think we're okay. Here's how Jesus responded to the Jews in that moment, in those dialogues that he was having with them. It's what he said. "Very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin." I'm going to repeat that. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now, a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Everyone sins. And because everyone sins, everyone is a slave to sin. Now, that's a big deal. Because a slave is someone who is at the disposal of their master. They have no right to choose their own path, not in life or even in their day-to-day routine. The master makes those choices since he owns the slave. And I think this passage, even though it's really, really short, it reveals how really spiritually serious this matter is. Because Jesus says that a slave is not really part of the family. A slave doesn't belong to the house forever. Only a son or daughter does. I've been thinking a lot about that this week. It seems like I have spent the better part of my life trying to define sin, understand sin, excuse sin, battle sin, you name it. At a minimum, the basic concept of sin, I think, is failure. It's failure to live up to God's standard. It's failure to live up to what God expects. It's failure to hit the bullseye. It's failure to stay on the path. And the slavery that Jesus speaks of is really at its core a bondage to a pattern of thinking that produces failure in our life. And this is what God wants to set us free from. All of us wrestle with forms of slavery, or I'll call it this. All of us wrestle with forms of addiction or being held in bondage to ways of thinking that produce failure and unhealthy living and self-centeredness and even mental illness and physical disease and ultimately death. The Bible speaks of that bondage that we are in. That slavery, that bondage, is the opposite of freedom. We think we are free, but we really don't know how great a slave we really are. If real freedom, if spiritual freedom is being able to ultimately be everything that God has created us to be, everything that we are meant to be, then slavery is to lose sight of that. Slavery is to lose the possibility of being what God has set us apart to be. Slavery is always horrific. Throughout history, slavery has been and continues to be an intolerable evil that strips the rights and strips the dignity of helpless people in order to do the bidding of someone or something else that has all the power. And even when someone who is in bondage tries to push back against that which has all of the power, it most often results in even deeper forms of imprisonment, physical or emotional, and sometimes even torture and death. Now, when we think of slavery, the mental images that we have are ones that have been painted for us out of history. But I think slavery can take an even more personal form for us today, for those of us who feel like we are in control of our own lives. There are countless millions of people today who may enjoy political liberty, but are slaves to various kinds of addictions that threaten their physical and emotional health, their relationships, their finances, their careers, even their faith. That's what slavery can do. As I was studying this week, I read multiple articles about the most common addictions that are plaguing the United States right now. And along with alcohol and nicotine and painkillers and other kinds of controlled substances, they also list food and sex and gambling as huge addictions that people in our culture are battling. And there were a number of publications that all agreed that really the number one addiction facing most people in the United States right now is an addiction to the internet and to its primary tool, the smartphone. Now, you can laugh, you can blow that off, you can say whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you as your friend and as somebody who is in the midst of that same battle, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that assessment as the problems of the internet that people are facing. And where that ends is anybody's guess. So take this with you today. If you sin, which is like every one of us, if you sin, you are a slave to sin. It's really just a matter of how addicted you are, whether it's an addiction to Facebook or to cocaine, really doesn't matter, because the slavery has you in bondage no matter what. When we let ourselves follow wrong and do wrong, whether it's in our attitudes or our actions, we become a slave of that wrong. And gradually, slowly, bit by bit, if something doesn't come along to change that, we will slip under the control of that addiction. We will slip under the control of that wrong. We will slip under the control of that sin. And later, when you want to break it, you'll find that you can't, because you have become a slave to sin. And Jesus says the only true liberation from slavery to sin comes from dwelling with Him, abiding with Him, walking with Him, continuing with Him, communicating with Him, remaining with Him, until He makes you into what He is. Until you are no longer a slave and you become a son or a daughter. You become part of the family of God. You see, a son or a daughter remains in the house forever. So listen to Jesus when He says, the Son can make you free, and you will be free indeed. It's what I want us to remember today as we share communion. We are no longer slaves. By faith, those of us who have come to Him, we are now permanent members of the household of faith. The song that the band is going to play right now, it may be brand new to you, or you may have heard it a few times somewhere, I don't know. But I can tell you this, I cannot speak any better words of preparation for our time of communion than what the band will sing right now. So I want you today, just a little different than what we have done. What I want you today is I want you to take and I want you to hold your bread and I want you to hold your juice for a while. I want you to listen to the words. I want them to sink in for a while before you eat the bread and drink the juice of the presence of Christ this morning. Let this be a moment that you think deeply of what Christ has done on the cross and the freedom that He has provided for both you and me.
He would welcome me. I was lost, but He brought me in. Oh, His love for me. Oh, His love for me.
Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last He has ransomed me, His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
So isn't that a great song? I hope you carry the melody and some of the words in your head and your heart as you go this week. Hope you have a great week. Make sure that you are checking your email and Facebook regularly. There's stuff that we are sending. There's going to be more stuff that we are sending. We got a lot of things that are planned here for this fall going forward. Don't want you to miss any of that. But as you go this week, I want to challenge you. I want you to be bold, to be confident. I want you to walk each day without fear, because we are people who have been set free. Let that sink in. Let that form every thought. Let that guide you each step that you take. Let's live like free people every moment of every day this week. Until next week.
Life is full of light and shadow. Oh, the joy